Welcome back to another episode of Secrets to Success with me, Crystal, and today's special guest is none other than the beautiful Simone Heng. Simone is a specialist in the topic of human connection. She is a professional keynote speaker, international MC, and a former broadcaster. And today she'll be talking to us about the topic of the power of human connection and how to master human connection authentically. Simone, thank you so much for joining us today. We're very honored to have you.
Hey, Crystal, thank you.
So Simone, you are an expert on the topic of human connection. Tell us why you think human connection is so important.
Look, obviously the world in July 2020 has never been as thirsty for human connection as it is right now as a result of the global pandemic. But I would argue that prior to us going into this global staggered shutdown of sorts, that people were becoming, particularly Gen Z, further and further disconnected, even though we are more digitally connected and we have easier access to people than we have ever had in the history of humankind. But those conversations and those dialogues and those connections were, if anything, superficial. I say it's the virtual version of standing dressed up at a party, surrounded by people and just feeling awfully alone. You know, it's like being surrounded by people, but not really feeling authentically connected. And that combined with what we're seeing right now with COVID-19, the reason why human connection is so important is it's actually what people are vulnerable and on the edge in terms of mental illness, anxiety, depression. It's actually pushed these people right to the edge of the cliff, this kind of social isolation. And that's to do with the science of human connection. So this is why it's so important. It's actually going to save people's lives in the current conditions that we're experiencing.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that, in one of your talks, you say that human connection defines the quality of our lives and it will be how we will remember. It's our legacy. Tell us more about what that means.
So absolutely. So if you think about your great uncle or great aunt or grandparent who's passed away, and when you're sitting there at Chinese New Year and everyone's, well, actually, it doesn't happen much on the Chinese side of my family, but on the Eurasian side of the family, they do love to sit and talk about the grandparents or the great grandparents that have gone before them, who have passed. You know, we remember these people at Christmas, Chinese New Year, all these things. And I was always interested in the way that people were remembered when other people talk about them. No one, for example, my dad died when I was 19. No one ever talks about my dad in terms of what he did as an occupation or how much money he had. Everything is to do with how kind he was, what he did for other people, how he made other people feel comfortable, how interested he was in the lives of other people and how he could make that better. And I think that that is true legacy.
I think,
because,
yeah. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, before I moved to Singapore in 2015, I spent probably 1.5 years, quite a few hours a day at my mum's nursing home when she became paralyzed. And you know, people at that stage of their life, if you really sit at a nursing home for 4 or 5 hours a day as a young person and see what these older people talk about, nobody is talking about their Louis Vuitton bag or who had more Instagram followers. Every person is literally pining for their grandchildren to visit, talking about their late husbands. Everything they talk about is related to connection. And I think that for me, connecting the dots on that was like, wow. So me being a former workaholic, now I actually schedule my connection time with family, friends. Called my mum today in the nursing home. We had a really good chat. She was feeling really good today, which is amazing because I can't visit her at the moment. And I make sure that I schedule that connection time in because I understand the science of what it does to my brain. So when we feel connected to people authentically, you know, our brain feels the way that we were designed as early man to be tribal people, to live in tribes. And when we're disconnected with what we're seeing right now, our body is actually flooded with cortisol, norepinephrine, and a lot of other stress hormones because we are not supposed to not be in tribes. And so it's like medicine to me. I make sure there's connection every week. We're seeing somebody. You know, it's a girlfriend's, or even though I have a partner, I always make time for my friends beyond that relationship as well.
I love what you said about, how your mom and in the nursing home, what people talk about is not how many bags they bought or how many Instagram followers they have or what school they went to, what jobs they had, what titles they had, how much money they made, but rather how many human connections you have made during your lifetime, the quality of those human connections, more importantly, and how you made people feel. And really connect with what you say, because at the end of the day, right, in one's autumn days of their lives, it's not, we don't care about the material things anymore, but more importantly, how many lives we've impacted or touched, and how much difference have we made to people's lives. That really matters, I think, right? And it kind of hits you in that time
Well,
of your life, especially.
I don't look at it in terms of scale. I don't think I know a lot of people of your generation, the younger millennials, really believe in purpose and impact and changing the world. But I
Yeah.
would like to take pressure off the message and say it doesn't have to be quantity. I would love people to be kinder to the connections in their own family, or, their own immediate circle. I think is
Yeah.
really important to do. And the quality of those, a life built around connection is a life well lived. Like if we were to start to underpin our lives to make the best quality connections that we could make, instead of chasing what we believe to be the paradigm of success, our entire world, what's happening in America with Trump, our whole world would look different.
If
I
people
wonder how
focus on quality of human
if that was our if that was our calling card, if that's what we were obsessed with, the way that we're obsessed with success, or what the world terms success to be, which is fame, money, notoriety, material wealth. I wonder how our life would change.
Yeah, I think if people focused on human connections, on human relationships, on kindness, a lot of change can be made in the world. Yeah.
This is something that I think I did throughout my life with a level of aptitude, but I also made mistakes because I didn't know the science of it. I'm by no means saying that I am absolutely perfect. It's like Brené Brown talks about vulnerability. She is not vulnerable all the time, right? But I think definitely when I started studying it, interviewing people, research, speaking on it, it became really clear to me that all of the books, all of the science, all of the studies say the same thing. And that clarity has allowed my personal happiness to increase by 80%, because I knew that being in a space of toxicity, being in a space of negativity, that those human connections were never going to be authentic in that space. So to make sure I cleaned up my life, even sometimes if you need to weed out, even though I believe in human connection, that does not mean I believe you should tolerate meanness from people in your family or your friendship circles. So I give full permission also for people to protect themselves, to create a zone and a community of healthy human connection, and get rid of those elements that could potentially damage your journey towards authentic human connection with other people. Because it's like a bad seed, right? It's like
Okay, yeah, no, I love what you said, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Now, knowing the importance of human connection, how can we become better at it? How can we connect with people profoundly and memorably?
Absolutely. So this is obviously a question I get asked a lot, and I think the first issue when you're meeting someone brand new and you're trying to create that connection is like, how do you start the conversation? So I would always say use commonalities to connect. If you're at a party and you see somebody, and obviously we don't have much parties right now, but maybe it's a dinner party of 5 people during social distancing where the couple you're with has invited somebody that you don't know. And use the commonalities. So basically you might see them wear a t-shirt with their favorite football team, strike up a conversation. I often do that with women. If I see women wearing something that's really beautiful, I'll ask them where they got it from, and maybe it will start a conversation that gets us deeper. They might say, my dad gave that to me. I can say, oh, my dad gave me the cutest gift when I was 10. He bought me a Beverly Hills 90210 bum bag. This is a true story. And then humor starts. So I use humor a lot. Humor is the great leveler, because it doesn't, if you go to a stand-up comedy show and the comedian says something funny, you'll find that everyone will laugh at that same point in the show. And all of a sudden you're all unified by that experience. So humor is a fantastic connector as well. So that's advice for like brand new people who are strangers to connect, right? But for your existing connections right now during this time, particularly the elderly in your life who cannot be mobile, who are totally starved and isolated of that human connection, I would love to see people upping their digital game. So sending your grandparents a video message or a voice note versus a text, pick up the phone and call them. Everything we've been doing prior to this pandemic was already on the way downwards in terms of human connection. We now have to work that 20 to 30% harder because we don't have face-to-face anymore. So in the absence of face-to-face, whatever we do on digitals, if you were a texter, I want you to send voice note. If you're a voice noter, I'm a massive voice noter. I want you to send video and photo. So we've all got to just up our game to just quench that thirst for connection happening right now.
Yeah, I love that. Up your game. And you know, like, yeah, if you're a texter, send a voice note, add a personal touch. And if you send a voice note, send a video so that you have both video and audio, right? And I think that's a great way to connect. And I think especially during this time where many people are working at home, we save so much time on commute, etc., that we can use that extra time to reconnect old friendships. And I mean, you never know where that goes from there, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, if one thing that I have to say is, when we put video out there of ourselves, or even voice note, we're on some level making ourselves vulnerable, because there's a lot more risk. It's why on dating, everyone's just messaging instead of meeting in person. There's so much more risk of rejection by showing your face openly and showing your voice, right? But the number one way to authentically connect with another human being is through disclosure. So when everyone else is sending an email, I want you to be that one person that discloses more information and sends a video or a voice note. It's going to allow people much more emotional information to connect with you. They're just going to know more about you. And yes, that's risky. And yes, that makes us vulnerable. But it is the only way back to a world where connection is at a level that's healthy.
And there's two things that I wanted to pick up based on what you said. You mentioned commonality connects. I think that's great, and that definitely is true. People connect on a level where there's something they share in common, whether it's topics, subject matter, content, or humor. But say, right, you meet somebody, an individual who you don't share anything in common with. How do you connect with that individual?
Okay, so this is really difficult. And I say in my keynote speech, when you persist, it's hard to resist. There are just going to be some people that you are naturally not like. And I used to be really bad at this. For me, I'd be like, too hard basket, right? Because I always was, I had a lot of people wanting to be in my circle. But there has never been a time more that you have to persist and break through. And this really came home to me when in 2018, my mum's memory with her dementia started to get really, really bad. And I would see her glazing in and out. It'd be hard to keep a conversation. And I realized the only way to connect with her is through. That's the only way. You've just got to push it. So I'm sure that you can find a commonality, super obscure, even with people that I didn't get along with. Maybe we like the same, like frozen yogurt, right? Yeah. That's a crack of light, right? That you can use. But you've got to be persistent, because the human reaction is to go, I don't get along with this person. They're not like me. I can't be bothered. But that is not life. We all have to work with people, get along with people, be in church with people that are not like us. And if we don't persist, then we continue to live in a world where there are huge fractions and divisions. We are more alike than we are not alike. And that's what COVID has showed us. Our basic human needs are more alike than they are disparate.
Yeah, no, I think that what you say is very true, because I think we have a lot more in common than we think. And sometimes the first impression that we meet someone, we feel we may not have common topics. We feel that we have different viewpoints. We feel that we have different hobbies, interests, etc. But at the end of the day, we can always come back to topics surrounding COVID, for example, where everybody is facing it at the same time. We're all in this together. We can talk about the cases, countries, and then you spark a conversation like that.
Absolutely. And I think so the key thing there as well to find those commonalities is how observant you are. So being present and mindful allows us to be observant, to develop or get clues that we can use to make a social connection, right? So going into these interactions, be present so that you can notice those things.
I love that. Yeah, be present, be observant, and then pick up on clues on what the person likes to talk about, or they know something about and you know something about, so that you can both chat about that topic.
And so rule one of human connection, be interested in other people. I mean, otherwise, it doesn't get very far.
Yeah. No, and I like what you said. When you persist, it's hard to resist. Love that saying. I think that's very true, very inspiring. But is there a point that someone should stop persisting or trying to stop connecting with an individual who simply refuses to connect? Because, sometimes if that person just doesn't want to connect, ultimately it's a two-way street. A relationship, a friendship is a two-way street, right? And if you keep persisting, it may come across as, for example, annoying, or in some sense, people may think desperation or whatever. So is there some point at which you think that people should stop persisting?
Yeah, so the point actually comes quite early on. Look, every authentic connection should be reciprocal. That's another one of the things, you know, you can tell if a connection's authentic if there's a nice ping pong back and forth. And I did a video on this on TikTok, and it was so scary to me that a lot of the young kids on there were like, but what do you mean ping pong back and forth? So what my generation takes as natural is having that EQ, that sense of this is reciprocal. This person's replying when I'm replying. This is normal. It's like when we're in person, we have a conversation and it's an equally matched conversation. Yeah. Now imagine if you don't have that natural, we are losing that natural guide to knowing what is too much and what is enough. So when I say ping pong back and forth, imagine a ping pong game. There's one ball that goes over, another ball comes back. So it's equally paired. It's an equal effort in that friendship or that connection being built. And if it's not, I would say after 4 or 5 times, if there's nothing, leave it, move on. It's okay. Not everyone is interested in human connection. And that's what I'm trying to change, obviously. But we're at a point where people are only just becoming aware of how important this is.
Yeah. No, I like what you say, the analogy about ping pong. There has to be back and forth. There has to be bouncing off the conversation, right? So yeah, I guess.
It could be even digitally, you know? Yeah.
So say, right, on this topic, how do we connect with someone who is difficult to connect with? I like to think I'm quite a sociable person. I make friends quite easily on the plane, on the trains, in queues, while queuing up for food. And in fact, you know, one of my good friends that I still keep in touch with today, and I even visit her and stay with her for a couple of weeks, we met while queuing up for Singapore chili crab in London 6 years ago. So it's easy, right? It's easy to connect with people if they're someone you naturally get along well with. But how do you connect with someone who refuses to open up, or whom you don't share any common interest with, you know, as we discussed earlier, and if that person does not respond, how is there a way to break through to them?
Okay, so firstly, let me go back to your Singapore chili crab thing, because on the weekend, my partner and I went to the dog cafe, and I have never seen a space where young Singaporean kids would come up to me as an adult and say, hey, auntie, can I pat your dog? We were all united by our commonalities of being dog parents. And you were united by the commonalities that you liked that food, right? So already you are primed to connect. It's why when we go to social places like bars and clubs, we're already primed for connection because we know we have the same taste in music. Now, in the absence of that, right, what I would think to break through to the person, you need to be actually showing that you are mindful enough of that person's behavior. If they are completely adverse to connecting with you, you've got to be compassionate and think every single person is going through a struggle that we don't know about.
Yeah.
So they could be grieving. They could have something going on in their life that they are not in an appropriate space to want to make new friends. They could be going through a divorce, and that's totally okay. If it's meant to be, that will also come back around. But you know, human connection is not harassing people. One big thing as well to really avoid with that sort of person is highlighting your differences. So for example, in Singapore, it's very common for a taxi driver to point out my distance from being Chinese. So they'll see my name on the app, it will say Heng. And the first thing they'll say, because they want to connect, they want to have a conversation, but the first thing they'll say is, we don't look Chinese. So there's nothing more repellent for connection than highlighting your space between that person. So forget highlighting how different that person is from you. Highlight whatever you can see to bring you together. And in the place that person might be so resistant, having gone through some really deep family loss myself, give them space, right?
So having the EQ to know when to persist, but also knowing when to give them the space that they need.
And we build that through life and through time, right? We build that through knowing when we go through rejection, we realize, oh, I was rejected because maybe I came on too strong. So now I need to pare it back. So through life, we build that EQ through experience. Why I'm worried about Gen Z is that we're going through COVID, there's all this technology, and they're not getting the interactive space that I did with an analog childhood to naturally bump into or interact with people and have the practice that my generation had. So this is why this message is also very important.
Yeah, yeah. And do you have top tips, or do you have any tips for, say, trying to break through to someone who gives you one word answers? For example, you're trying to build rapport with someone, right? And like, what do you like to eat? One word answer. How many children do you have? One word answer. And they don't, like you said, there isn't a ping pong. You ask, they give a one word answer, and they don't ask you any questions back to find out more about you as a person. Is there a way to break through to such individuals?
Yes, I would leave some space. Okay, so
Yeah.
I've sat in the airplane next to people. I'm super chatty. The person wanted to be left alone. But if you give some space, allow that person after 3 pings forth on your side to come back. And
Yeah.
highly likely they will, because the silence is unbearable. But if you carry that all, you're never going to find out if they're actually interested in connecting. I would say the great test is be quiet. And if they don't come back again, that's going to show you, hey, something is up. Maybe they want to sleep on the airplane and not talk. Maybe there are other reasons at play, and it's not to do with you. It could be that the timing is wrong. I'm very sociable, but even I have times, like sometimes a taxi driver wants to ask about my race and my ethnicity, and he's not offering any information about himself, and he just wants all of that. And sometimes, that I just say, Uncle, I'm Singaporean. My parents are Singaporean. I was born here. I would rather us talk about the world or politics or his kids. And I think that that's also an EQ that has to be developed. But if you can develop that EQ, it is such a priceless skill to move through the world with. It really is.
Yeah, I think so. EQ is very, very important because it allows you to connect with different individuals with different personalities of varying degrees of ease to talk to, right?
So that is what we call code switching, right? So when I jump between cultures, between the Western part of me and the Asian part of me, that's code
Yeah.
switching. And that's connection too, because when I code switch to neutralize my accent for the taxi driver to help me get to my destination, I'm doing that because I want to close the gap between me and him. And if I
Yeah.
close that communication gap by neutralizing my accent, he will understand me better. And when he understands me better, he will ping pong me back, right?
Yeah.
So that EQ is a very, very valuable soft skill. And I would argue that those of us who can be great human connectors into the fourth industrial revolution, which is the AI revolution that's coming, those of us that still can connect, that will be such a rare, priceless skill. So if you have it, it's time to flex the muscles and hone it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And you mentioned code switching, like that word. How do you connect with individuals if, say, you don't share the same language? How do you bridge the
Oh,
gap between different cultures without the use of language?
so that's all to do with expressiveness, right? So when we show our expressions freely, and we have a little bit of an issue with this in Asia because we show face on this continent, which means when we show face, we have a disconnection between how we authentically feel and the reaction that we show. And it's so interesting because I just did a speech on Friday in Africa across the whole African continent to 900 young people. And they're so emphatic, voice notes, feedback, video, expressiveness in how they write. And I almost felt like, oh my God, am I even deserving of this feedback? Because having worked in Asia now for half a decade, that feedback is withheld. Like we don't do the feedback, right? We do it was okay, it was good. We're not complimentary by our cultural nature. My parents certainly weren't growing up. And I think on top of that, we've been taught to hide our excitement, to be conservative, and particularly if we're feeling negative emotions, to not show negative emotions. And you'll see this when you go to Japan. So I was in Japan and I decided to test this. I wanted to see if emotionality is contagious. The science says it is. I kind of knew it was. So I was in a clothing store with my partner, and Boom Shake Shake the Room came on, and I was being served by a Japanese girl who doesn't speak a word of English, getting me jeans, and I'm doing my most expressiveness. She's not giving me much back. Boom Shake the Room comes on. I have a video of this. I start dancing to that song. She starts dancing with me, full expression, and we didn't even speak that. So I already know if she did speak English, our commonality connecting is like, oh my God, don't you love Will Smith, right? And it was
Yeah.
such a beautiful moment because I was like, if there's any country besides China where this practice of showing a very neutral expression and a positive expression, even while feeling negative emotions, if that is happening in Japan and I can use what I know from the science and the studying to subvert that, then that's what it is. You have to show expression. We have thousands of micro expressions. There's a guy called Dr. Paul Ekman who has created an atlas of emotion. It's his life's work. And all of these micro expressions other human beings pick up. And this is also why Zoom is so fatiguing for us right now. Zoom is so fatiguing because we don't have that face-to-face thing where we can pick up the micro expressions. It's harder to do. So we're exhausted because we're looking for that feedback. We're looking to see if our message is cutting through from the reaction, and we don't have that. We have galleries with blank screens, or like I'm doing right now, looking down the barrel of the camera, not really seeing your responses back. I'm trying to give eye contact to the audience for this, so I'm not looking at your responses. And that's another great technique for video, which I'll get to. But so we now need to give more expression and response, not just when we're communicating, but also when we're listening via video. And use that, especially in the absence of the same language, or if someone speaks your language at a lower level because it's their second or third language, allow them to be more at ease by giving all of that you're listening, that you're trying to connect. It's all here, guys. It's all here and here in the hands.
Yeah, it's all the emotion, the expression, right?
Yes, so important.
I like your story about the one in Japan where you sang the song, or you danced to the song with the Japanese girl, and then that's how you connect even without a common language. All your different teachings, for example, you said commonality connects, and then I think one of them is emotion brings connection into motion, right?
Emotion gets connected into motion.
That's
the other one. Yeah.
And then your example of dancing to the song with the Japanese girl, even though you don't speak the same language, shows that you have something in common, love for music, love for that song, bringing emotion into motion through connection, because you both felt the song and both are dancing to it.
Well, I mean, here's the test if human connection is at play, right? Does that Japanese girl feel more connected to me versus my partner who is with me, who, firstly, he doesn't look, I mean, I look Asian, he looks white, firstly, so that is obviously a visual difference, right? Phenotypically, it's a difference, but he didn't really emote with her. He just did his shopping. So does she feel more connected to me after that dance than she does to him? And I would say that the likelihood is probably, 80% more connected she feels to me. And I think that is how you know human connection is at play. If you ask yourself, in the absence of me doing this dance, in the absence of me smiling, in the absence of me gesticulating, showing you that I'm absorbing your message, would you feel more or less connected? And I think the answer is you would totally feel more connected if you had that expressiveness, that emotionality. So it's that easy, guys. It's what we were wired and born to do.
Yeah, I love it. Like, just express yourself, use the emotions, show some vulnerability, gosh. and I guess that's one way to open up, right? And people feel connected to you. In terms of showing emotion, is it okay to show your vulnerability and emotion? Is it appropriate in all kinds of situations? For example, how do you show that in a corporate setting or at the workplace, for example?
So I actually had someone from my courageous speaking community write to me about this today. And I actually said to her, because I've had an experience working in a 100% Singaporean organization, which I think most people on an expat path when they come here don't. They work in multinational corporations. And what I can say to you from that experience, it was such a rich experience, I learned so much, is that I don't think in the Asian environment, in Chinese culture, as a Chinese person, I can say that disclosing your vulnerabilities is considered weak. It's considered, not playing by the art of war, doing the opposite, showing your hands so freely. Like my mother would often say that, don't just anyhow tell everybody everything, okay? So there have been, however, when I was working in Dubai, I worked at a workplace where you were encouraged to show up as your full self, and you could show yourself warts and all, and it wasn't considered a failure. In fact, it made you more entertaining on air, and you were considered an asset because you were almost like creatively free. And what I can say about that and bringing that to the workplace is that it makes for a happier workplace. It makes for more connected people, and more connected people create content that connects better. And I know that because from the time I left this organization in Singapore, and I've seen my now God-given right to post anything I want, I'm no longer under contract. The connection that people feel to me when I disclose my actual truth is incredible. So do I think it's going to earn you favors in the Asian working environment to disclose? Well, in the year 2020, I would say no. I would say it'll probably, if you work in a very bureaucratic political place, it'll probably cost you. but will you feel happier, like you're living your truth more? I think so. But it certainly wasn't easy for me. And I tried to bring that to the workplace. And when new people joined, I tried to be honest and open about what was going on. And I know for the newer people who joined after me, it helped. But I think that in order to succeed in that sort of bureaucratic and political environment, I mean, bureaucracy and politics, just by those terms, you know that it's inauthentic. It's not being yourself. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to play that game and be there? However, if you are lucky enough to get to study overseas, work overseas, and be in a Western environment and see the other side of it, you know, each has its good and bad. As someone who straddles both cultures, I can say there's pitfalls in always being able to be yourself all the time and so self-possessed. And there are also pitfalls of being part of Asian society and Asian institutions where it's more communal thinking. You put away your own self-actualization to be more embedded in the community. But we are part of a global world now, so maybe everyone can choose to walk the line between both. And I find happy medium walking the line between both.
Yeah, I think that's great. You know, being the key to life, to almost everything in life, is balance, right? Being able to strike a very good balance between knowing when, and again, what we spoke about earlier also comes into play, EQ and the experience that comes with that, you know, knowing when to be more vulnerable, knowing when to show more emotions, and knowing, I guess, also when, in what kind of culture or setting you are in, to maybe be less vulnerable than you would in another culture or setting, for example. Just knowing when to toggle, right?
Exactly. And for those of you watching who are young, like, you know, 20 or under, that also comes with time. And sadly, that's nothing that any human connection expert can teach you. That has to come from experience through life. But I can say the more you put yourself out there for connection, the more experience, bad or good, you're going to have. But that experience itself is going to bring you closer to being a great human connector. And I certainly have lived a really dynamic life in different markets with different sorts of people in my life. And some of it worked and some of it didn't. And some of my communication skills were really bad. And sometimes I was really good. But
with bad communication skills, Simone.
I was really bad because I'm so emotional, right? And when you're so emotional, you can also go the other way. You can be too communicative. You can be too direct because I'm so comfortable with how I feel and expressing that. It can also be very confrontational to people who are not comfortable with seeing so much emotion. And I think that the bottom line is, provided you get those notches under your belt, you get that experience. Oh my goodness, do you get better with age? It's amazing. Now I know 90% of situations, like what to do, what not to do, what relationship is getting a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit overstepping boundaries that I need to put some space and then come back in. And that's the beauty of getting older.
Yeah, it comes with experience, comes with maturity. Yeah. I think it's such an important skill, human connection. And I'm so glad, you know, you are using the skills and talents that you have to spread this message about human connection, because it's what really binds us and unites us, especially in the future of AI and now when everything is going virtual, right?
Chatbots. Oh my God. I hate your chatbots. Yeah. But, you know, it's part of it, you know, it's the first thing companies do is when they go through digital transformation is they get chatbots, they
and the thing about these chatbots is sometimes they even call you by name, but then you're actually talking to like an automated person.
Yeah. My email newsletter that goes out for courageous speaking, we can select the option to call every single person by name, and people do email me thinking it's a direct email just for them. And then I obviously then reply back as a human. But I think what you can do now is amazing. And this is how we know human connection works, is companies are doing this because they know it makes people feel like they're more connected by using their name, or by using email language that looks like it's a one-on-one email when it's not. And then that way they can close a sale. So it's also, human connection is now really being commodified as a way to inform what we're doing with AI and the technology. It's fascinating times.
It is. So how do you identify an authentic human connection? How do you identify the authenticity of a connection?
For me, it's always the reciprocity. Like if I see anyone pushing a friendship uphill, I just, you know, if they're my really good girlfriends and they tell me about somebody, I'll just be like, sister, I just tell them straight, no chaser. I'm like, babe, you need to rest this, or this is not okay, or this person disrespected you. Because actually neglecting your friend and ignoring them is also a level of disrespect too. So if there's no reciprocity there, and you've been friends with someone for years and all of a sudden they start ignoring you, I would question the authenticity of that if nothing has happened, right? Or if somebody only comes to you when they need something, I think we can say that that's not authentic. I was in a friendship with someone where I really, really looked up to this girl. I really, worshipped her. And I found out that she had actually been saying quite jealous things about me, and actually really, really broke my heart. And I've forgiven her, but I thought, would I want to have that energy around me? And I thought it's not actually her fault, because that friendship was never authentic. It was always me lifting her up, glorifying her. And when I came into my own, that dynamic changed. But I set that dynamic. So I should have never set that dynamic. I should have set a dynamic of equality, not of worshiping someone. It should have always been equal. So, I'm 36 and I'm still learning.
Oh, you don't look Simone at all.
Oh, thank you. Sister, I got a good doctor. Seriously. But so, it's always a learning process, and every day I learn more about connection, every day.
Wanted to talk about courageous speaking and this community that you founded. I think it's a great platform. Anyone who's watching would like to learn more about speaking tips from Simone. She organizes monthly webinars, and also you can have access to her for any questions you have, and also access to a community of like-minded people who want to be a support and network to each other for public speaking. Tell us more about courageous speaking.
Yeah, so courageous speaking is something that I wanted to do from the time I was still at my previous organization, because I saw there was such a gap in terms of people in the Southeast Asian market teaching public speaking skills, but they were not Asian themselves. And as Asian people, we deal with a whole bunch of cultural connotations around speaking out and being outspoken. It's assigned a negative, it has negative connotations because it's in some level disobedient. And all of us who've grown up with Asian parents are taught that you are a good girl or a good boy when you are obedient. Therefore, there is this huge block. And I was doing one-on-one coaching, and I was finding that a lot of my clients have a moment of trauma that has robbed their confidence, to do with going into their school in Singapore and having their bad report card shown to everyone. And then they lost their confidence, and it affected even how they spoke up. But with the one-on-one coaching being so expensive, I knew it couldn't touch as many people as I was seeing commenting on this content when I was putting it on LinkedIn and Instagram. So I thought I wanted to create a community where we can touch all those people and help all those people, my people on this continent, from someone who's experienced it, and give them value and service them for, like, it's 15 USD a month, 22 Singapore dollars, compared to coaching, which is $700 an hour. So you can imagine that the value, they still get access to me for questions, but the only thing that I don't do, which is different from the one-on-one coaching, is, like, I don't help them put a presentation together. I don't watch that video footage, but everything else, in terms of they can write to me and I answer back an email or voice note, answer their questions. If they've got a presentation coming up or working, and the community is incredible. We have like 100 people in there, and it's only been around 90 days, and they're in the community and they share with each other. It's just beautiful. I am working now on Facebook ads to boost it, because I can't keep posting about it all the time on my social media, but I can't wait for it to, I want it to get to 1,000. I want it to really start making a dent, because people in the Philippines and Vietnam cannot afford $700 an hour to coach with me. So how do I help these people, And I think if we talk about connection and impact, that's definitely something that you're going to see more of, and that part of it is going to grow with time.
Yeah, I think it's a great platform that you founded, because not only do people get to learn from you at a much more affordable price, but also they have access to each other as a community, improving their public speaking skills together.
Yeah.
And again, human connection, right? It's all about togetherness. It's all about building connection.
They are incredible. Like, everyone shares their story. When we hit 50 members, I did like a free bonus coffee connect, where we just all got on Zoom, and I just sat there and they just all chatted with each other, and I just moderated it. It was really beautiful, Crystal. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Well, I'm so glad that you came up with this platform because I think it really, really helps a lot of people who want to improve their public speaking skills and, are able to do so within their means. Yeah. So thank you so much, Simone. Really appreciate your time and coming on the show to have a chat with me about the power of human connection and how to master human connection authentically. In summary, I think, you mentioned great points about that commonality connects. So coming up with a subject matter or content that you have something in common with so that both of you can bond over it. You mentioned about being vulnerable, showing your emotions because that brings people together as well. You also mentioned about persisting or not giving up so easily because some people just need the added kind of effort to break through to them. And I think they're great points. As you said, human connection really, really unites us, and it's a very important skill, especially as we head into the future.
Thank you so much, Crystal, for having me.
Thank you so much, Simone. Really appreciate your time. Welcome back to another episode of Secrets to Success with me.